What's up, everybody? This is Ryan here, and just going to do another reflections video. It's been quite a long time since I've done one, but I just wanted to share some themes which I've been thinking a lot and trying to apply to myself lately. And I know a lot of my friends who were in a work situation are now stuck at home and possibly without much structure in their lives, and that can be something that's very difficult to deal with because a lot of times when we're working a day job, we have something to do. Our time is dictated to us. Our tasks are dictated to us on threat of being fired. So there's quite a lot of incentive there. Whereas if you're stuck at home with no one to direct you but yourself, it can be very difficult to cultivate effort, which is what I wanted to talk about here. So I thought I would share some reflections and experiences on how to approach cultivating effort, how to work towards your goals, whatever those happen to be, in a situation where you're maybe stuck at home. Although I think this information might be useful even if you still have a workplace to go to. So there's three main themes I wanted to talk about. So the first is cultivating a continuity of effort versus a continuity of results. So in my life, when I first kind of learned about that I had a capacity to develop my own life situation for the better. Of course, I was absorbing a lot of information and input from the self-help industry. And I find while a lot of the things that are said in that industry are useful, a lot of them are very distorted and really didn't reflect how my own life has gone. And one of those things being, I find in many cases, self-help material is all focused on the result, the goal. And it basically tells you if you 100% focus on your goal, that the universe will bend itself to your will and magical things will happen and law of attraction and Tony Robbins and etc. Maybe I'm just unlucky, but I have found that every time I really buy into that and basically attach my self-esteem to my goals, and then I don't reach those goals, sometimes because I didn't work hard enough, other times because I didn't know enough, and other times because I just got unlucky, I can tend to lose my motivation and confidence and kind of get in a rut. And I've had that happen many times over the years. I think we all have, probably. There are some people who either are just super talented or just get really lucky, but I don't consider myself one of those people. So that can sound pretty grim, and I'm not saying don't have goals, don't get me wrong. But what I would suggest to you is that it's more important to cultivate a continuity of effort versus a continuity of results. Because in many cases, we just don't have as much control as we would like over the results of our endeavors. One thing we do have control over is whether or not we're putting forth effort every day or most days to reach whatever goal we're trying to reach. So what I'm trying to say here is, even if you just get really, really unlucky and things keep falling apart, your product launch didn't work, you got rejected from 10 different job interviews, you failed a course, or this, that, and the other, what will always serve you is being a person who's capable of putting in effort on a daily basis. And if you attach your self-esteem to the daily effort, which is something you have a lot more control over, because to be perfectly honest, in terms of like product launches and job interviews and all these sorts of things, I don't think we have quite as much control over those sorts of things as we would like. Luck seems to be a big factor. But if we at least attach to a continuity of effort, we know that we're getting better, a little bit better every day. And if an opportunity does come along, we're going to be able to better take advantage of it. So it's easy for me to sit here and tell you to work hard as someone who's cultivated effort for many years. But many of you might be in a situation where you can't even really get started because you might be stuck in a rut or something like that. So I'll spend a bit of time talking about supporting factors for effort. So the first one, which both of these are not really going to be, I'm not going to be trying to tell you what I think you want to hear. I'm going to be trying to tell you what I really think worked for me. You might be different, but if you haven't tried these things before, just really consider it. So one supporting factor for effort is looking at the things you do to make yourself comfortable and happy in like a short-term sense. So it could be substances, it could be addiction to video games, it could be addiction to social media, some kind of stimulus, whether that be physical or mental. Look at your day-to-day actions and really look at these things critically and say, is this thing that is making me happy in the short term preventing me from having a clear mind or having good effort, this, that, and the other, for the rest of the day or the next day? So it could be, what am I eating? Really, it's all about look at your habits critically and look for habits which are essentially like putting a Band-Aid over an infected wound. On the surface, it looks like it's useful, and it might even provide some kind of temporary relief, but it doesn't fix the problem. Typically, the things that we most need to let go of are the things which are the first things that we turn to when we don't feel good, when we're not having a good day. And that's a really awful, sinister kind of situation. It can be summarized, I don't know if you've ever watched the Austin Powers movies, kind of a weird analogy, but they had this one character called Fat Bastard. I'm not fat shaming, this is just an analogy. And in one situation, one scene, he says, what was it? So he's an overweight character, and he says, I'm unhappy. I eat because I'm unhappy, and I'm unhappy because I eat. Or I eat too much because I'm unhappy, and yeah, you get the idea. So what I'm trying to say here, look at your day-to-day habits and look in particular for the ones that make you feel good in the short term, but ruin your capacity for effort in the long term. And you might need to give them up. You might need to get uncomfortable. And that's the second thing I wanted to say here is a big realization for me this year in working on a curriculum for a Java course, which, if I'm honest, I am interested in teaching the fundamentals of programming, but I'm not super interested in spending any more time in Java. What I'm trying to get at here is I have this product I need to make, and I don't really enjoy working on it a whole lot, specifically the part that I have to work with the Java programming language. After working with Kotlin for several years, it feels like going from a motorbike to a tricycle. But the point here is that it's not always supposed to be fun. You need to learn to cultivate being happy just in putting forth effort and not always expecting that stimulus, the getting high. And when I say high, I don't mean specifically drugs. It could be drugs, but getting that spike in endorphins or that, oh yeah, that's what I need kind of attitude. Let's go eat a pizza or let's get wasted kind of thing. And I'm not saying you should never do that, but what I'm trying to say here is almost invariably those sorts of activities and habits harm our ability to get our work done. Because what'll happen is you have this thing you know you should do but don't really want to do because it's not that exciting or fun, and that has to compete with your daily habits, which typically, like I said before, in the short term they make you feel great, and then in the long term you're going to feel bad because you aren't getting your work done. So what I'm trying to say here is, if you have a really important goal, you might need to sacrifice a certain amount of that getting high type feeling and learn to become more content with being the person who gets your work done. Now, to finish this off, all of that could sound pretty negative because I'm really talking about taking away your comfort zone, taking away the things that sort of make you feel happy. And that's not always fun. So what comes in to replace that? Well, I can tell you, during the periods in my life where I'm not wasting a lot of time and I am getting my work done and I am doing things which aren't necessarily fun in the short term but make me feel good for the rest of the day, like exercising in the morning or whatever your habits happen to be, your positive habits. The reward of those habits is that you have a peaceful mind. Instead of looking at yourself and being like, I'm a failure, I'm not getting my work done, I should have worked harder today, etc., etc., you will be proving to yourself in your actions that you are capable of getting your work done, that you are moving in the right direction, even if you're not getting the results yet. And it takes a little while, a couple weeks, to get used to relying on that kind of happiness, which is a more fixed but less you're not necessarily going to get like high off of it like you would if you're playing a video game or getting wasted with your friends or whatever, but you're going to have this lasting background sense of contentment. And when you have a goal that requires an extraordinary amount of effort and focus and a clear mind, that is going to serve you a lot better, in my opinion. Now, I'm not saying you want to spend your whole life living like that, but what I am saying here is, like I say, if you have big goals, then you're not necessarily going to be going out every night with your friends. At least not right now. Look at what your goals are, what you're trying to achieve, and really ask yourself, okay, if this thing really is important to me, so important that I would be willing to sacrifice other things in order to get there sooner, then, and if you look at that and your answer is no, then don't do what I'm talking about here, because everything's uncertain. Maybe you find out that, yeah, this thing I'm working on really isn't really what I want to do. If you answer yes, no matter how difficult what I'm doing is, whatever price needs to be paid in order to achieve here, I'm willing to do that because I don't want to live the rest of my life wondering if I could have, then yeah, you might have to live a very different lifestyle than your friends and family. At least for a while. So anyways, hopefully that was some encouragement. I'm not trying to just sound overly pessimistic. I'm really just trying to give you what I think is realistic advice. This is the kind of advice that helped me the most. And sometimes there are good times, there are highs, like when I've got my checklist here of all these different video plans I have to make. And when I made it halfway through this list after about 20 days of working on them, yeah, that was a good feeling. So there are good moments too. And, self-esteem for me isn't an issue because I'm actually doing what I want to do. Kind of lost that train of thought. But what I'm trying to say here is, it's not always going to be fun, but if it's really what you want to do, then it must be worth making sacrifices for. And our society our friends or family don't always encourage us to make those sacrifices. And if necessary, you may need to actually perform some very kind of critical analysis on what you're doing, and just be realistic and say, yeah, I need to give this habit up, or I need to work harder, or whatever the case may be. So I hope that rambling was useful. I wish you luck in whatever your goal is, and it's time for me to get my ass to work. So peace out.